Daryl here, and this is my daily devotional. Experience is the best teacher. You can be told something time and time again, but until you can speak from your experience, theory doesn't ever become reality. In Numbers chapter 32, Moses is about to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. They needed to cross the Jordan River. But there were some who didn't want to go. They saw some fine land for pasture on the other side, the side they were on. So why bother crossing the river? And so Moses makes this statement to them. God has called us to go across the Jordan. And then in verse 23 he says, "Be sure your sin will find you out." Be sure your sin will find you out. Now that statement simply means that you might not do something you're supposed to do, a sin of omission, or do something you're not supposed to do, a sin of commission, and you may think you get away with it, but at some point, the judgment of that sin will come back to haunt you. You may get away with it completely in this life. It may not be until the judgment of God, but be sure your sin will find you out. Well, we are in Exodus in chapter 2. And we saw where Moses' mother had placed him in the basket, floated up the Nile to the Pharaoh's daughter. Moses' sister, who had watched all this take place, ran and got Moses' mother to come to be the nursemaid for Moses. Now Moses has grown up in the Pharaoh's palace. And now he's out watching his people, the Hebrew people, working hard labor. And he's seeing the slave masters, the Egyptians, working them and beating them. And one day he sees one of these Egyptians beating one of the Hebrew slaves, and he can't contain himself any longer. I am in Exodus chapter 2, and I'm going to start reading at verse 11. One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Glancing this way and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He looked this way, he looked that way. He didn't think anybody would see him, so he killed the Egyptian. The next day he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" And the man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian? Be sure your sin will find you out." He thought no one saw. He looked left, he looked right. He didn't think anybody saw him. Verse 15. When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses. And Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. When Moses said to his people, leading them to the promised land, "Stay, but be sure this is against God, and your sin will find you out," he was speaking out of experience. Because though he had looked one way and looked the other and didn't think anybody would see him, when he killed the Egyptian for beating the Hebrew brother, how his sin found him out. Folks, that's the pertinent lesson of this devotional. You and I may think we get away with something every time we sin, or we don't think anyone knows, but even if it doesn't come out till the judgment, be sure your sin will find you out. Repent and turn from that sin. God bless you. Good day.